joining us on the Political Roundtable today. Great to welcome with us a man who has written a very interesting book, came out in hardcover back in November, and is doing very well on the charts, as they say. It's called The Outpost, an untold story of American valor. We're joined today by the chief Washington, D.C. correspondent now for CNN, Jake Tapper. Jake joins Gary Schuster and myself. And Jake, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
It was great. First of all, congratulations on the move back to television. You took a bit of a respite to kind of concentrate on the writing, didn't you?
No, I mean, I've been off for the last few weeks because I've been between ABC News and CNN, and just without getting too much into complications of it all.
Sure.
The CNN gig starts Tuesday, so that's it. I've had a chance to focus more on publicizing the book, but it wasn't for that reason.
Hey, Jay, you're going to be doing the White House. What's the assignment in Washington they're going to give for you for being the chief White House, chief Washington correspondent?
I'll have my own show sometime in the next few months that will launch, and then in addition to having my own show, I'll be like the lead reporter in Washington. But no, I'm not going to be the White House correspondent anymore. That was my old job.
Right, but I mean, you know the beat. You're more doing big stuff around Washington. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's not so much day-to-day. This is what happened inside this building as much as it is. If there's a big Washington story, I might take the lead on that. So, for instance, on Wednesday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will be testifying on Benghazi before the Senate and the House, and I'll be doing some of that coverage.
Right, just sort of a big overview rather than the two things, whatever. I think that's a better gig for you than you had at ABC.
Well, it's broader. I think it's the next step. I enjoyed being a senior White House correspondent for ABC. That was a great gig, but I felt like it was time to move on.
Gary, you were the White House correspondent, for those who may not have been with us before, for Detroit News and CBS News, and Jake, you've done that as well. It's an interesting beat, though, isn't it? I mean, the White House. A lot of it is kind of fed out to you what they want you to report on, so it's a different kind of beat what you're going to be doing now, right?
Yeah, I mean, the White House gig is a good one, but it is narrowly confined to what's going on inside that particular building. It's not. I was a congressional correspondent before the White House, and that's a more enjoyable beat in some ways because the lawmakers are walking around and you can, accost them in the hallways and ask them questions specifically in the hallways. Whereas the White House, the people who are making the decisions are pretty much cordoned off from you. So it's a lot more reporting. Yeah, you have to dig a lot more.
You can develop those stories a lot better on the Hill than you can in the White House, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I think so. Absolutely.
Well, plus you have 535 sources versus one or two,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's just always, it's easy, people in the White House can not take your phone call, but it's harder to ignore a reporter who is, talking to you as you walk, or talking to a senator or congressman as they walk from the hearing back to their office.
Yeah. So how's the book tour going? Are you still touring, or are you, or not?
Yeah, it's going well. I've been going. I guess the last trip I did was to Wilmington, Delaware. The lieutenant governor of Delaware read the book, and he was very moved by the stories of these troops and wanted some of them to come to his inaugural and speak to people. So a week ago, some of the soldiers from the book that I put him in touch with went to Delaware. They spoke to junior ROTC students. We had a forum in a packed auditorium where I basically interviewed three of the soldiers, and they shared their stories, and then they got to attend the inaugural festivities. So that was enjoyable. I'll go up to Philadelphia later this week. And there are just other trips scheduled here and there. I'll go to Fort Bragg, the Savannah Book Fair, St. Anselm College, Dartmouth College, West Point.
Is it possible to get movie rights for this kind of book, Jake?
It is, yeah. I've been talking to a screenwriter friend, and he's unofficially attached to it. But yeah, I mean, it is possible to get movie rights to something like this. It's called taking an option on the book. But Hollywood is very reluctant to tell a lot of these war stories because, with a few exceptions, Zero Dark 30 is among them. There aren't a lot of successful movies about Iraq and Afghanistan. So there has not been there's generally never a rush to tell a story like this, whether it's my book or others, just because box office-wise, they're not always the surest bet.
Well, Zero Dark 30 is doing really well, and I think I think once these troops start to leave, I think you're going to see more action. I think it's good for you to be in the forefront of this stuff early on, where you might be able to put something together ahead of the rush. Yeah,
I hope so. I mean, Danny Strong is the screenwriter friend of mine who's attached to it, and he just won some Golden Globes for Game Change, and he's writing the new Hunger Games movies and the new Da Vinci Code movie, so he's not a small potatoes. He's a pretty big deal, and he was very moved by the book and the stories, and so hopefully it will be made into a film. I think the more people that know the stories of these soldiers and what they go through for us, the better for everybody, for the country, and for these soldiers. Also great news came when President Obama announced just over a week ago that he's going to be awarding the Medal of Honor to one of the soldiers in the book, Staff Sergeant Clint Romeshay.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I think it really lends itself to being developed as a movie. I really do.
I mean, it is cinematic. I mean, there's definitely a real narrative arc to it in terms of troops pushing into a tough place, sort of succeeding, and then a catastrophic event happening, and this very, very difficult battle. What was really moving in writing the book, what was moving for me was, all 8 of the men who were killed in this big pivotal battle, all 8 of them were killed in some act of selflessness, some act of trying to rescue one of their brothers, or provide ammunition to him, or returning fire against the enemy. All of them were doing something heroic in one way or another. And,
absolute valor. True valor,
Jake, just kind of reading some of the notes on what you did to research the book. I know you interviewed over 200 different people. How do you go about it when you decide to write a book like this to start the research? I guess a lot of phone work and that kind of thing. Did you find any resistance in your research?
Yeah, there were some people who were not interested in cooperating. Most of the people who were skeptical eventually were won over by my goal for the book, which was just tell as many of these stories as possible and honor as many of these troops as possible. It was really a matter of just like old-fashioned leather reporting, getting in touch with somebody who had a connection to the troops, and then just talking to her, talking to it started with this woman, Mary Henry, whose son, Eric Carter, was a sergeant at Combat Outpost Keating. So I reached out to her because I'd read a story about her holding a reunion for some of the troops. I reached out to her, and then she put me in touch with her son. She put me in touch with her son's first sergeant, John Hill. And then it just went from there, people giving me names and numbers and saying, you should talk to this guy, you should talk to that guy. Other troops who found out I was writing a book about the outpost, it was originally going to be focused just on the big battle in 2009. Other troops who had served there in earlier deployments, 2006, 2007, reached out to me because they wanted their brothers' stories told as well. And then it just took on a life of its own, with a lot of troops getting invested in, and a lot of people wanted to make sure that their part of the story was told. Ultimately, it was, when I started it, I had no idea how big the project was going to be. And maybe I wouldn't have done it had I known how big it was going to be, that I was going to be interviewing more than 225 people. But ultimately, it was a lot of work, but I'm very pleased with the result.
Was it tough, Jake, when you started to whittle down all the things that came out of those interviews to sort of make a story? I mean, you have so many disparate kind of things. Yes, the theme is the same, but how did you? The editing had to be tough on that.
Yeah, the editing was difficult because, first of all, it's always tough taking people out of a narrative. And there were people that I interviewed whose stories were important, but ultimately, they had to be whittled down. Or in some cases, people had to be taken out just because, the goal is for people to read it. And it's already long. It's a 600-page book. And, if it's a 1,000-page book, nobody's going to pick it up.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that was difficult, definitely. There were difficult decisions to make when writing the book. One of them was how graphic to be about the violence. In general, violence in this country, war violence, is sanitized in media coverage, which probably doesn't serve the interests of the troops or their families or a larger understanding of what going to war entails. So after a lot of soul searching and talking it over with families and journalists, I ultimately decided to lean on the side of explaining what war actually means, trying not to be gratuitous about describing the violence, but trying to be honest about what it means when an RPG, what it does to the body. Because if we really understand, if our goal is to truly understand the sacrifice and the risk that these soldiers put themselves at and what their family members go through, then we really need to understand it. We're so, I'll speak for myself, I am so removed from what's going on in Afghanistan, what our troops are going through, what their family members are going through. I felt at the very least I should convey to readers what this means, what it means if somebody is hit by a bullet. So that was a difficult decision as well.
Yeah, I had to be.
The name of the book is The Outpost, An Untold Story of American Valor. I've been talking with Jake Tapper today with CNN, the anchor-in-chief Washington correspondent. And Jake, I know it's doing well already, but give out a website and get a hold of the book or get a hold of you if they like.
Sure. Obviously, it's available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. And for people who want to write in or post notes to soldiers, the Facebook page has been a pretty active place for people to write in or ask questions or communicate with the soldiers who are in the book. And that's at Facebook.com, and it's /outpostbook.
Great. Jake, appreciate you taking a few minutes to join Gary and myself on the Political Roundtable today, and best of luck to you on the CNN, and you're going to be on, I guess, throughout the day, but mostly on the nighttime news predominantly? Or?
I think starting off in the late afternoon, and we'll see how it goes.
Good luck to you, Jake.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.